Hello, welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode of Texas Cooking Today, we're going to be making tamales. It's a Texas favorite, and a lot of people all over the United States love these little things. Now, today's tamales that I'm going to be making are a pork tamale, and what I have is a pork arm here, or pork leg, whichever you would prefer to call it. Some people call this a picnic. It's just a large fatty chunk of pork is what you need, and it doesn't matter which cut you get. If you get a butt cut or whatever, that's great. Just put it in a pot. You can either roast it or you can boil it. Now I'm going to boil it because I get good results on the meat texture this way, and I also get a good broth that I can make my tamale wrapper out of, the masa. Now, I have also my corn flour here. This is corn masa, and this is ground in just such a way that it's good for tamales. It's a little more flour-like. Also, I have some corn husks back here. And if you notice, plenty of chilies. We're going to make a sauce with the chilies and flavor our meat. And also, I'm going to be using some of these flavors like ground chilies and things in the masa wrapper to flavor it. So, let's get on with cooking this. First of all, I've got this on my burner. I'm going to put my burner on high. Let's go ahead and pour some water over it. Now I'm pouring hot water in here. There we go. Now I've got it almost covered. I'll add just a little bit more in just a moment. But basically my roast is covered. I'm going to let this sit and come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, I'll reduce it to simmer. And once it is simmering, we just sit and wait until it becomes falling off of the bone tender. Literally, it needs to fall apart, okay? So just keep cooking it until it's like that. And don't forget to add some salt, too. As I mentioned before, I will be making a chili sauce to go with this, and this is just a paste, first of all, that we're going to make from chilies. Now the first thing I have to do is to take these dry chilies and rehydrate them, and I'm just going to cut a simple slit in these. Some of them are already kind of broken apart, so they don't matter as much, like this one. It's broken on one side. Now don't worry about the seeds. We're going to be dealing with those later. They're easy to wash out when you need to. Now the first chilies that I'm putting in here, these long red ones, these are called a guajillo chili. They have a lot of flavor, they're really fruity, and of chilies they are my favorite. And what I'm putting in here is going to be 12 of these things. And of course, you know, that doesn't mean a lot because if you notice, some of them are large, some are small, so it just has to do with, you know, visual proportion. That one's up on the bottom, that'll give it a slit. There we go. Now, a lot of times, if you're going to be scraping these out by hand, and if you don't have a food mill, then you might want to make just a simple slit lengthwise, like so, and be careful about it, because after that, once you rehydrate this, you're going to open it up and use a spoon or a knife to scrape out the pulp on the inside. Now, the little bitty ones here, these are very hot. I put in 12 of these larger chilies. The small ones I don't have to use as many of, so I'm just going to put in one. That's a good size one there. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's go with 6 of them. Put the rest of those aside. Like I say, they are extremely hot. And the seeds I can just pull out of my way, and I'm going to throw those away. This chili right here is a chipotle. This is the one that everybody's fond of these days. It provides a wonderful smoky flavor, and a chipotle is just simply a jalapeno that has been smoked and then dried. These are a lot tougher. They have a very tough outer skin, and when they're rehydrating, that skin doesn't soften much. It still stays very hard and leathery. But the pulp inside gets soft, and that's the part we need. There we go. That one just crumbled. I'm just going to throw it away because it doesn't look too pretty on the inside. I think it got overcooked. The larger ones here, these are a poblano chili that's been dried, and they're called an ancho when they're dried. So, 1 ancho, 2 anchos. Sometimes you will hear poblano pepper and ancho peppers called pasilla. Pasilla really refers more to a dried chili, not to a specific type, and there is one type that's more commonly referred to as pasilla. It's a long, narrow chili. I can't remember right off the top of my head the name of it, but fairly common. So what we have here is a batch of chilies, and I'm going to need some hot water to rehydrate these. Some people might say you could boil them, it goes a lot faster. Boiling them will soften them faster, oh yes, but it doesn't do as good of a job of rehydrating the inner pulp. So I've got right here some hot tap water. That's 1 quart. 2 quarts, and I'll probably end up putting in another quart in there, but that's enough to cover them for now. And all I have to do here is just, again, we're going to be waiting. In the meantime, while I'm waiting, I look over and I notice that my pork, let's move over this way, my pork has gotten kind of foamy on top. It looks rather ugly. So what I want to do is to take a spoon and to remove some of that. If this gets cooked back down into it, it has somewhat of a bittering flavor to it, and it's not going to be as good. So go ahead and just remove the scum from the top. Wouldn't it be nice if we could do that in Washington as easily? There we go. Uh-oh, I slipped in a bad joke. You know, Texans are hell about their politics. They're not any good at it, but they're just vicious about it. Alright. So if any more of that comes up to the surface, just skim it off. And then don't worry about it. We just got to let him boil. That's a big old roast. It has been about 2 hours now, and the roast is still boiling away. It's starting to get somewhat tender, but not quite tender enough. Now I have, in addition to our chilies here, some garlic. And I would say each pair of these doubles is a full clove, so that's 1, 2, 3.5 cloves roughly that I'm using. So don't worry too much about how much garlic. I'm really basing it upon quantity overall, which is not so much how many cloves, but how much would this make if it was minced and put in a spoon, and I would say that's about 1.5 tablespoons right there. I have right here a device called a food mill. If you don't own one of these, I recommend getting one. This is a larger size. It's commonly used in commercial kitchens. Now, when installing the paddle in your food mill, these things are a little bit tough. The spring can be difficult sometimes. There we go. Now, this is a beautiful item. It has a sieve on the bottom. As you've seen, there's a paddle that goes in top that's spring-loaded. Food gets caught under this high edge and just gets forced down through the low edge here where it rubs across it. Now we're going to be making a bit of a mess. I have a small bowl to capture that which we do not want, and a large bowl to capture that which we do want. Most of your food mills will have some sort of feet to set on a bowl. Make sure it has some way of suspending itself, otherwise you might find it difficult to use in some circumstances. Now the garlic, I don't need to do anything to process it other than cut it into some smaller pieces so that it will process well through the food mill. So that's what I'm going to do first. Now I am using on the sieve on the bottom, the food mill sieve that is the smallest holes. And that way I get a nice smooth puree that comes out the bottom of it. And the beautiful thing about this device is it will separate seeds and skins from the pulp. So all I have left is pulp. Now let's take a look at our chilies here. If you remember, we put these in and they were kind of shriveled up and tight. Now look how that has expanded. You can see my knife cut in it. It swelled up beautifully. All of these did. So, and as I mentioned before, these stay kind of rough on the outside, where the others have gotten very soft and tender on the outside, especially these anchos. So I'm just going to put all of these chilies through the food mill. And I have my separate bowl here to put the stems in. I'll pull the stem out first. Just drop the chili. You just tear it apart, which you see me doing. Now, if, like I said before, if you don't have a food mill, you can take that pulp and just scrape it. See how I can pull it off of the skin right there? You can separate the pulp very easily from the skin, so just scrape it off with a spoon if you do not have one of these machines. It'll take you a little longer, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. One thing about making tamales, you just don't start this recipe unless you have a little bit of time. It's a good weekend project. A lot of people say, oh, it's a big job. Well, yes and no. I think it's sort of a, there's a few extra steps to it than you would find in cooking some dishes. But on the whole, it's really not that difficult. Alright, now in the top, I have just a whole lot of skins left. Down below here, I have a great deal of chili paste. Beautiful, rich smelling chili paste. Okay, put that aside. Now that I have a beautiful chili paste and a bit of a mess here to clean up, look at this. It looks like I easily have about 2.5 to 3 cups of chili paste in this. Plus a little bit of garlic in there. Wonderful tasting garlic. So when I cook this up, I'm going to be adding in some of the broth from the pork that has been cooking. And we'll also add something to bump up the acidity just a little bit. We're going to add in some lime juice on this, of course some salt. But other than that, that is a beautiful, beautiful chili paste. We've done well. Okay, let's move on to the next item. Let's take a moment and check out our roast. Since we started the milling out the chili paste, this has been in there for a while. Now see how this is starting to pick apart and shred very easily on top? All of it is? Okay, that's ready to shred. Okay, I'm ready to take this big guy and turn him into absolute wonderful tasting food. I want to do myself a favor. I'm going to try a little of that stock. See what I've got to work with. Oh my goodness, that's delicious. Oh, we couldn't get better than this. I'm going to shut off the heat. I'm going to pull this out, put it on another plate. Let's turn our attention to the sauce now. The ingredients that we're going to add to it are going to be a little bit of lime juice, as I mentioned before. I have about 1/4 cup here, some salt, and some cumin that I would like to put in this to just bump up that flavor and make it a little more Texas flavor. Now, I've got this wonderful chili paste that we made. How simple was that, huh? Now that I have placed all of that in there, I'm going to switch to a little bit different instrument here. Let me get a whisk. I'm going to use a medium-sized whisk, not one of the larger ones. And also I need to get a ladle, because I'm going to use some of that pork stock. Ladle it up. One other thing I'm going to get, because I have so much stuff floating in my pork stock right now, I believe I need to get a strainer to run my pork stock liquid through. I'm trying to be careful, but I'm still getting some little bits. There we go. That strainer will catch anything I don't want. it is. I'm going to reduce this paste to more of a sauce-like consistency. And as I told you before, how this stuff just loves to absorb moisture. It's a good example right there. Look at that. Just like tomato sauce likes to take on moisture and just keep on doing it, this is no different. Start with about half of that lime juice, and the reason I use half of it really depends on the chilies that you get each time. Sometimes it might be a little more and sometimes a little less. Some salt down in here. Go. And just a little bit of cumin. Somewhere between a quarter and a half a teaspoon. Starting to bubble lightly, and reduce that flame. Reducing it now to a medium-low. I'm about ready to cover this. That is just beautiful. It's starting to smell lovely. All it needs to do now is to simmer, develop its flavors. I can taste it and correct the seasoning after that. Next thing we're going to turn our attention to is going to be shredding this big roast back here. We have to let it cool a little more, and then also making our masa mixture. Okay, now I'm just going to start tearing off chunks of meat because I'm trying to get down to that bone, and inside of it is still rather hot. Okay. While the outside is nice and cool, the inside is just boiling hot, even though it's been a while, because after I did the cleanup, I then went and fixed a glass of wine and kicked back and relaxed for a little bit. Like I told you, cooking should be fun. It shouldn't be tedious. Is beautiful. Now some of this is going to be chopped up, which is why I have the cutting board and the knives out here. Some will just shred all by itself. You know, a good example of that, pull this out. See how this is? And it just shreds. So I can just take it and do that to it. And I have perfect meat for tamales. It just doesn't get better than that texture right there, because it still allows a slight meat texture in the tamale, but nothing that is real large or chunky. Nothing that's real stiff or hard to bite through. Okay? And that's what we're looking for. So, if you would, just keep processing down your roast. Well, we're getting there. Look at that beautiful, beautiful meat. I've already tasted some of this. It does taste good. It's going to taste a whole lot better when we get it seasoned up with our sauce and some extra salt. have it. Now, the rest of this, I'm simply going to set aside. For that, it goes in there. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to throw it back in my large pot. There we go. And I can finish cooking it off for, like I said, another recipe. If I wanted more meat, I could certainly use it, but right now, I believe I have more than I want. This is going to make a lot of tamales. Alright, now, let's move on to the seasoning step. Off with the gloves, up with a little cleaning, and then we'll be seasoning. We're about ready to go ahead and season our meat. However, it is now time also to stop. Let's take our corn husks. There we go. Now these things are a little bit stiff when you first get them. And I've had these sitting around for a while also. I'm just going to push them right down into some water. Just starting rehydrating them. Water is rather warm. I use just hot tap water. There we go. Now, I'm just going to let those soak, and they need to soak for, well, a good 30 minutes or so. Is a good amount of time for them to soak. If they soak longer, it doesn't hurt. It just makes them more pliable. We just need them pliable enough to be able to roll and fold into little tamales and put into a steamer. Okay. We have our sauce. Stir that a little. Oh, it's just beautiful. The consistency is really nice. I'm going to pour some of this right down into the meat, about half of it. Okay, we have our meat mixture ready. This can set aside for any length of time. It's not going to hurt it. If it's going to be out, I would say more than a few hours, so I would go ahead and refrigerate it. After, of course, you bring it to room temperature. Okay, meat mixture ready. Let's move on to the masa, what everybody's been waiting for. Okay, let me introduce you to our ingredients for making our masa mixture for tamales. We have back here in the corner some masa, and this is a special tamale masa. It's about halfway in between the consistency of cornmeal and corn flour, and so it's a special grind. It works best for tamales, and I suggest that you look specifically for that. If there is a Hispanic section in your market, they will probably carry some of that, or also if you can go to a Hispanic market, you'll get a wide selection. Now, back here I have our broth. That is 7 cups of the broth that we extracted from our pork. Here, this is a bowl of lard. That is 1.5 cups of lard. Yes, I said it right. Lard. Not shortening. Lard. Now, I know that doesn't sound heart healthy, and I didn't advertise this video as being heart healthy. Frankly, lard is just one of the ingredients that goes with tamales. So if you want tamales, you go with lard. If you're just so ridiculously anal about it that you have to cut it with something different, then use some vegetable shortening. But that's the only real option. It helps to keep the wrappers firm and gives them flavor. Now, I have some black pepper, some cumin, and also some crushed red pepper, and our mixture that we made earlier, this beautiful chili sauce. Now here I have a tablespoon of baking powder. That's not baking soda, it is baking powder. And a tablespoon and 1/4 of salt. Okay? Well, let's get on with making this. The first thing I'm going to do is mix some of these dry ingredients with my masa back there. So let me get some things out of my way to make this happen. There we go. Now I'm going to dust over the top my baking powder. I'll do the same with the salt. And I'm going to use a whisk to just gently combine those items. There we go. That baking powder is quite important. It's going to give a little bit of lift to this as they're cooking up, and it gives them, again, it gives a structure to the tamale masa once it's being steamed. Alright, now, I have more ingredients than are going to fit inside of my mixer. So I'm going to have to work this either in batches or be very careful and then pour it into another bowl and thin it at the end. And that's more than likely exactly what I'm going to end up doing. The first thing I want is to go ahead and start with my lard. And this is a very dense product. It's kind of difficult to work with. Okay, lard is in the bowl. Get my beater on here. Pop that head off. I'm going to soften that lard just a little bit. There we have it. We have our tamale masa mixture all ready to go. Now, just scoop that off. Get the majority of it off of my beater. Well, that looks beautiful. I can't wait to make some tamales out of this. Okay, for our next shot, we're going to be assembling these guys. So let's get an area prepared with all of our ingredients. Now we've come to the point of assembling our tamales, but before we do that, I wanted to mention something about how we're going to cook it. You're going to need a large pot. I don't expect you to come up with anything quite this big. For instance, the pot I cooked in earlier, the roast, was cooked in that one right there, and that would steam our tamales just fine. The important thing is that you have something you can put in the bottom of it to lift your tamales out of the water so that they're not boiling. Now, this is a turkey fryer. It's made for outdoor turkey fries. I use it for making beer. Although, the basket that's inside of this makes a perfect steamer basket for tamales because it lifts them up off of the bottom so that there's clearance down there about a ½ inch, and also it allows us, and I can lift it higher if I just go ahead and put in a cooling rack in the bottom, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. But it allows us also to make sure that our tamales are not touching the sides of the pot and that they good steam all the way around them. So I'm going to take this out. Let's place a cooling rack down in the bottom, and that increases my lift up to about 1 inch. So now I have about 1 inch of space. I can keep boiling water in the bottom and do perfect tamale steaming. This is different from a tamale pot because the tamale pots simply have a rack in the bottom to lift the tamales. Nothing to keep the tamales off of the side of the pan necessarily, or to allow steam to rise up around them. Okay, so I think it really works out better. So there's our pot for cooking tamales, a turkey fryer. Now, we have our meat mixture we made earlier, our husks, which have been soaking, and I'm going to turn those over and use the ones on the other side. I've turned them a couple of times now, and they've gotten nice and pliable and soft. And I use those completely wet. Now I want to get a cutting board and put over here. And I like this just because it's got a nice drip edge and I don't have to worry about anything rolling off the sides. Now, what I want to do is to take that beautiful little wrapper, this guy right here. I think I got a couple of them. There you go. Now, you can work by covering either this corner or this corner, depending on whichever you feel better doing, okay? You can roll it this way and then fold it, or roll it the other way and fold it. It doesn't really matter, okay? Sometimes they can be a bit too wide, and this one is just a bit too wide. It's got more wrapper there than we're going to need. However, that's not going to hurt anything. You can go ahead and use it all if you wish. Now, what I'm going to do is to take some of my tamale masa, and I'm going to spread it right down across this wrapper. And this is where these little silicone spatulas are so handy, because whatever I get on this board, I just scrape back up and use on the next one. See how smooth that spreads? I want to get an even coat all the way across it. I'm seeing my spices and the little specks that I wanted to see. That's perfect. Now, I want to take a small spoon, like so, of my meat filling. Put it right down in the center. If you have to shape it a little bit, go ahead and shape it a little bit. Then take this. Now this is important. The masa on this side needs to make contact with the masa on that side. So, give it just a little bit of a fold under. Some is going to roll off of the edge. Don't worry about that. You can go ahead and roll it. And like I said before, if that wrapper is too large, discard the excess, and there we have it. You can see the filling sticking out the end, and if you want to go ahead and push that back and kind of pinch this down a little bit, that's quite alright, and it makes for a nice tamale. There we go. I just closed it off. Now, in this endeavor, you're going to get a little bit dirty. Your board's going to get dirty. Don't worry about it, okay? Just keep making the tamales, and they will all come out right, okay? So, put that in my pot over here. And when I put those in the pot, I'm going to crisscross them and kind of overlap them. And we'll show you, give you a shot down inside of the pot to let you know exactly what that looks like. Now, some people, and I have seen this done by some Hispanic ladies that are very, very careful about their tamales. They're, how would I say it? Is anal retentive? Yeah, that would be a good way of saying it. They're very particular about their tamales. And as a result, they want them tied, so they will take little strings of this, and they will pull them off like that, and they'll wrap it around their tamale, and then tie it off in a nice little bow, and it looks just lovely holding the tamale. Frankly, it's not necessary, but it looks really pretty. A little my mixture. Now what have I used there but maybe a tablespoon and a half, or possibly 2 tablespoons of meat? Not a whole lot. It's very delicate. You want to roll it gently. There we go. I thought I would pause my work just long enough to let you take a look inside of my pan and see exactly how I'm stacking these. If you'll notice, I did the first course just like I did the second one. The first one runs this way, but they're lined up just like these are. And I've got a total of 8 on bottom, 8 on above them, and I'm going to alternate them just like that, coming up about 4 to 6 high. And then I will begin my steaming process. Now if I have more to do after that, I can just line those out on a baking sheet and then put them in here to steam after I get these steamed. As far as how long to steam them, that can take a little bit of time, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour on average, and we'll get right down into the specifics on steaming these. Now remember, when you're cooking your tamales, to occasionally lift the lid and check to see if you've got plenty of water in there. And we got a lot of steam, plenty of water boiling in the bottom. So, cover it, just let them keep cooking. If you run low on water, add some more. I have pulled out my tamales, and I put them over on the side here to be cooling. I still have a few left down in the pot here, and over here, just water left in the big pot. So as it is, I've got tamales that have got to cool down, and don't try to eat these right away. They'll be really too soft at first, but once they've cooled, they will set, the matzo will set, and then they will be firm and wonderful to eat. Well, it has been a day of cooking. I tell you what, tamales are something, aren't they? Let's take a look at one of these. We'll pull one out of the middle here. Now, just unwrap him. Oh, look at that. It should be nice and firm. These have had about 20 minutes to cool off. Now, if you'll notice, the back end's pinched, the end nice and open. Now that's a good tamale. And you know, they judge it by how much masa you have on the end there. It should be enough to hold it, but not too much. It shouldn't be too bread-like. Oh, goodness, I'm making a mess. Well, I hope you enjoy your tamales too. These are going to be good. Y'all have a good night. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.